Good afternoon, ladies. How's everybody doing? Ladies and gents, welcome back to A Queen's Roundtable Show, which happens every second and fourth Sunday of the month. And I am your host, Jacqueline Harrison. I am super excited to be here today and to introduce my awesome guest. Before we get started, I just want you to know, please join us each and every second and fourth Sunday of the month. I introduce and interview a different entrepreneur, and we basically talk openly and honestly about entrepreneurship, the ups and the downs, and we always end on a note with different tools and techniques to help you develop personally, professionally, as well as your leadership skills, personal, professional, and leadership skills. And that way, it helps us to get out of our own way, right? And I am also your host for A Queen's Roundtable Quarterly Symposium. I'm also an author, a clinician, and a confidence and success coach. So without further ado, I'm going to let my special guest introduce herself.
Thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be here, Jacqueline. And let me just say happy Mother's Day again to all of the beautiful queens out there. Happy Mother's Day. And it is your day, regardless of whether you gave birth or not, because we know that we've got a lot of queens out there that are really playing major roles in the lives of children. So we are just so grateful and we celebrate them today. I am Jacqueline Lulu Brown. I am the revolutionary and radical reverend and elder that operates outside of the box. I am a women's empowerment consultant. I am an ICF certified coach and minister. And I just love pouring into women. I love queens pouring into me. This is a journey that we are all on together, and I'm excited to be here today.
As I am excited to have you here today.
Thank you.
Truly, because it's been a little bit of a journey, right? But finally we are here.
Right.
And we are making this happen. So,
yes, we are.
And let me compliment you. I love your earrings. Beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, so to get us started, first of all, I'd like for you to talk to us a little bit. Tell us a little bit about Lulu. Would you prefer to be called Lulu?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Lulu's it.
Okay, so that's so good. I just wanted to make sure I asked before I just, start going in on calling you Lulu. But so Lulu, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, do you where you based now? Mm-hmm. Like, where did you grow up? Did you know that you always wanted to be an entrepreneur? Tell us a little bit about who you are. Who is Lulu? Who's the person behind the brand?
Wow. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about Lulu and the name Lulu and why I use it for my branding. I was named after the endearing cartoon character Little Lulu. Now, for the baby boomers out there, Little Lulu was, different from everybody else. When everyone was going left, she was going right. She was considered to be noisy, a busybody, always doing the opposite from what everyone else was doing, and just a very eccentric and a character overall. And very powerful and boisterous when she was determined to get something done. So being given that name, I think I've probably been true to that. And I've probably given more pain to people than maybe joy in some instances. So that's just a little backdrop on Lulu. And I would say that growing up, I grew up in the largest city in the state of Connecticut. I grew up in the New England area. The city of Bridgeport is actually the largest city in the state of Connecticut. And I grew up there in the turbulent civil rights era. I grew up experiencing racism up close and personal because I did grow up in a integrated neighborhood. I went to integrated schools. So I had that real up close and personal experience with racism, with being treated differently. And I think from that perspective, I always knew that I was not going to settle for the status quo. If something was, I'll say, in the lower end of the ocean, I always wanted to be over in the deep end of the ocean, and it didn't make a difference whether I could swim or not. So always being that type of person that I knew that I wanted to do something. Now, I didn't know exactly what that something was, but I did know that I had a sort of, I'm going to say, disdain for people being treated unfairly. That piece of that's been there since a child. Now, oddly enough, I had 40 years in corporate America as an information technology professional. I went from the olden days of, and I'm a baby boomer, so I went from the olden days of when they called it data processing all the way through the evolution of technology, computer operations, networks and infrastructure, software quality engineering. And then, we got into where we are today. But throughout those 40 years, I went from very humble beginnings all the way up to having C-suite executive level positions, worldwide responsibility, traveling all over the world. Through doing all of that, I always made a point to be that different person, to make a difference. I was not your out of the box leader. I always thought about things in a different way, did things differently. And eventually, not in the beginning of my career, but eventually I actually began to find mentors that were able to help me be my authentic self, because I wasn't always my authentic self. Helped me to be my authentic self, but yet navigate those waters in a world that tries to shape and mold us into what they think we should be. Wasn't easy, but doing that, I've always had a passion for empowering women. So what I do today, I actually did throughout my career. I can remember always being the person that was helping someone, wanted to see people succeed, wanted people to be promoted, to grow, and always wanted to do everything that I possibly could to bring equality to people's lives, that I had an opportunity to be that influence, to make sure that if there was an opportunity to encourage women to be involved in technology, in STEM positions, I was always pushing that, always mentoring, and in ministry, because ministry has been a part of my life as well. And that part never left me as I was going through corporate. Doesn't mean I went on my job trying to push religion down people's throats and telling them how to live their life. But when we are operating in our authentic self, there is such a power there that we can give to others that enable them to flourish, to prosper, and to actually rise to the highest version of themselves.
Wow, that was a mouthful. I had no idea. So you were in corporate. You were in corporate for a very long time. Okay.
Yes, I was. Yes, I was.
And I know a lot of the audience. Some of them are still, managing both. They're regular 9 to 5 corporate jobs, and then they also have their own business, or some of them have already, transitioned, completely into their own business. So, I'm always amazed when I hear that, but that's quite an extensive background. I didn't realize your background was in information technology either.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah. So you're a trailblazer.
Yes,
All
I
right.
had.
So now, in terms of the entrepreneurs, your company,
Mhm.
how did that come about?
Oh wow. It came about. I was, and I have to, give her major kudos. I'm going to say it really came about with me sending an email to a fantastic author, entrepreneur, coach across all areas of business, and her name is Melissa Crawford. And Melissa wrote two great books. The first book was Good to Great, and then she wrote another book, The Queen Code. And most people are pretty familiar with the Queen Code, yes. And I was, years ago, I was watching her YouTubes, and I was just kind of like, okay, she's speaking my language. And there was this sort of fire burning inside of me. I mean, I had my corporate role and I was what the world deems to be successful, but I felt that there was something missing. I just was not satisfied. It was, people be like, oh my God, you travel the world, you have worldwide responsibilities, you have this great career. I was not satisfied. I wasn't satisfied in my ministry. I wasn't satisfied in at the level that I was operating in my ministry. And work was just showing up in excellence every day. And so what I want to share with folks is that there is a difference between showing up in excellence and showing up in your genius. So Lulu, that character I told you about, that person that is always doing the opposite, outside of the box, making a difference, that person right there, that's where my genius is. My excellence was that I was showing up and I was doing what I was supposed to do, and it was a great, successful career. But I found myself always involved in diversity initiatives in the company, always involved in outreach programs, moving closer and closer and further into ministry activities. But there was something still missing. And so I'm watching these YouTubes, and I just made a decision one day. I said, I'm going to reach out for this Melissa Crawford. I'm going to reach out for her. And we had a conversation. And in that conversation, she said one thing that took me from where I was to where I am now. She said, who knows all this brilliance is inside of you? She said, the things that you are telling me, the things that you want to do in specifically in the Black church, specifically with Black women, specifically with Black women that find themselves in situations, whether it's incarceration or abuse, bad relationships, all these things that you want to do in your ministry as well as in your career. Who knows all this brilliance is inside of you? And I just said, probably nobody. Because, there was so much that I was not releasing. And so that was where it began. And actually, that's how we came up with Revolution Ascension. I told her, I said, there's so much that women need in today's church. And being an African American woman in a church that is predominantly Black, I said to her, I want to make a greater difference and a greater impact. I want to talk about the things we don't talk about. I want to teach the things that we should be teaching, but nobody's teaching it. I want to go where most they want to go, but they don't. In conversation, in our teaching, I want to bring about a revelation that frees women, because I felt that we were becoming ingrained in religion And it wasn't about religion, it's about relationship with our Creator. And I wanted to see women flourish and be free. I wanted women to know that there is no sky and there are no limits except the ones we set. Because this God that we keep talking about we're serving, we can live this greater life. This greater works will you do? Well, why aren't we doing it? What do we need to do? What do we need to break out of? And so having that conversation with her, I said, I just want to revolutionize the Black church and the way that women are not only treated, what we're taught, the teachings. I just want to revolutionize the whole thing with a message that literally sets women free in a manner that they never knew even was possible, where they just soar in whatever it is they desire to soar in. So we went on that path. And as we were working together, we came up with the name Revolution Ascension. And things just kind of took.
Okay, so let me ask this, and I'll be trying to hold it in, but sometimes I have these senior moments and I'll forget. I just want to say that was powerful, what you said about when it clicked, I guess, for you. When she asked you, and I'm just paraphrasing y'all because I don't remember the exact words, but when you said she asked you, who is aware of this? You know, who is aware of this brilliance, these talents, you know, and that. And I want to urge the listeners out there to really think about that, because so many of us just push it to the back, like almost like we sit up on the shelf, you know, just forget about it, or put it in the closet and it gets buried way in the back of the closet and we don't even think about it. So that in itself was very powerful. And then I wanted to say, I find it's just such a small world, because I knew exactly what you were talking about when you mentioned that young lady. And actually, speaking of that, I haven't seen, because I first became aware of her through Facebook. And I haven't seen any of her posts in a while, now that I'm thinking about it. But it's so funny, there's such a small world that when you said it, I was like, wow, that's right. And I had listened to her a few times, and I was like, wow, everything that she was saying was so on point. Okay, then I wanted to say, talk to us a little bit more about the name. Like, I want to know more specifically, like, what the name represents. And then I want you to kind of talk a little bit about the work that you do in the church, and in terms of changing, I guess, women's roles within the church, or maybe talk a little bit more about what you feel needs to be talked about in the church that they're not talking about.
Okay. So Revolution Ascension, it was revolutionizing just the way that we do things today from a ministerial perspective, and revolutionizing that in a manner that women are actually ascending. We're not just doing the same old thing over and over. It's not the same, okay, I go to church on Sunday, I go to Bible study, I make sure that, you know, I do whatever my role is. But it was actually ascending, where we are making what I call atmosphere shifting positive impact in the world. When we walk into a room, there literally is a change. There's a shift where everything begins to sort of change for the better. And I don't know if you've ever experienced where someone comes in a room and people say, whoa, did you feel that? That was so powerful. And all of a sudden, it's like a magnet where everyone is drawn, not necessarily to the person, but to the power in the person. And as they're drawn to the power in the person, they walk away with wanting to, within themselves, they say, wow, what's my purpose? What's my calling? What should I be doing? Because we all have different gifts, talents, and abilities. So to answer the second part of your question, I'm going to go to something I said this morning. Every Mother's Day, for the last, I'm going to say 15 years, I have been the speaker for Mother's Day, and I have never missed one yet. And when COVID hit, and this is in Connecticut, so I'm in Georgia now. And when my husband, I used to work when I was in corporate, I was going back and forth and traveling the world. And so travel was just something, was nothing for me to be in Connecticut. And when I went full time in entrepreneurship, it was kind of like, okay, I'm not traveling like I used to. And then COVID hit. And we said, no, we're going to have Zoom. So I have not missed. And I just say that because it just makes me feel so good that this is something that I have not missed, not one time since I've been doing it. And this morning, my message was decisions, decisions, decisions. What decisions are we going to make an impact in the world as women? And I came from the Proverbs 31. And here's an example specifically from this morning, odd that you would ask this, of what I stated. The Proverbs 31 woman has been sort of studied from the perspective of she's this woman that does everything. You know, she's perfect. And sometimes, not making an indictment, but sometimes the Proverbs 31 woman is kind of used to, not intentionally, but sort of a whipping stick to, well, I got to measure up to that. It says she gets up early in the morning. She's not lazy. She makes her goods. She takes care of her home. She does all of these things. But there is another piece that I haven't heard a lot of people go deep and teach on. And that is the advice that she gave to her son, who's going to be king. So when you go and read this whole chapter of Proverbs 31, it is really describing a mother and what she is teaching and telling her son about being a good king. And a lot of times we leave these important pieces out. We leave out how powerful we are, how important we are, how we speak life into others, whether it's our children, mainly our sons, because we want our sons to grow up to be the kind of men that we want them to be good husbands or good mates. We want them to grow up to be these men that we can say, wow, look at my son. He knows how to treat a woman. He knows how to talk to a woman. He knows how to honor a woman. He knows that it's a covenant. It's a partnership, that the woman is not a slave. He knows that it's not about cooking and cleaning and making sure you do your duties and roles. There is no get rid of the roles. And that's the piece that we don't really get into. Why do we have to have roles? If we're in covenant, why don't our sons know that they can wash dishes, do laundry, and take care of children? If they're small babies, boil, well, they probably don't boil bottles anymore. So that lets you know how old I am. When my kids were small, we used to boil the bottles. But whatever today, whatever they do today, maybe they pull it out of a pack and shake it up and whatever. I don't know. But whatever that is, this is covenant. But we're so caught up on Western European religion, and then we overlay all of the capitalistic moving away from who we are and our heritage, and we adopt somebody else's heritage, and we just throw all of that in the mix. And we've lost who we are as a people and who we can be. And so this morning, that was one of the things, when I come with the message, depending, I thank God for my home church, which is still in Connecticut. I thank God for the pastor and the assistant pastor, because I have a lot of freedom. But I will tell you, there are probably some places where if I were to speak and talk about and even make an attempt to teach, I might not get invited back, because we are not supposed to be enslaved. We can't say, and this isn't about religion, but I'm just going to use for an example for those that may quote scripture about Jesus. You can't say that Jesus came to set us free and be free indeed, but yet we are shackling our women with these old, fables, and we're taking scripture and using it to enslave them in the same way that scripture was used to enslave us as Black people. I mean, when you think about it, it was used against us. We saw, for those that don't really understand or get it, watch the movie Birth of a Nation. And I'm talking about the new version. So it's really being able to teach that we are not slaves. We are not less than. I tell people, when you look at the creation sequence, and I had an excellent mentor go deep into this, but after she went into it, I even studied it even deeper. And when you look at that creation sequence, we are not behind, underneath, subjugated to. That's slavery. That is not freedom. And I think we will see more of a loving covenant between Black men and Black women when we move into a place of enlightenment, which brings freedom and not a roles, rules, regulations, and this is the way it's supposed to be versus letting people work out their own home life. Let them work that out. Let them make the decision on what works best for that husband, that wife, or those partners. So that's a taste of what I taught today.
It's a taste. Okay, so I'm just sitting here and I'm thinking, I know that some individuals would say, and I've heard them say it before, is that's what's part of the problem today, in today's home and in today's marriages and so forth. Ooh, sorry, everybody, my allergies. In terms of today's marriages and them, not lasting because of the fact, or one of the reasons, I guess, is because of that we're not adopting those traditional roles. The traditional role, the man does this and the woman does this. So I'm pretty sure that you have something to say in reference to that. I mean,
yes, yes. Let me get a little comfortable here now.
We're comfortable.
Yes, I do.
I'm ready. I'm sitting back. I'm ready. Go ahead.
So I think that roles, the roles are killing us. Who made the roles and who said? When taking all things into context. And I'm going to go across the board. I don't care whether, and I'm not in any way, shape, or form telling anyone to throw their book of life, out. You don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So whether you're Christian and it's King James, whether you're Jewish and it's the Jewish Bible or the Torah, whether you're Muslim and it's the Quran, whether you're Hindi, whether you're Sikh, whatever, there's a bunch of different religions. I think that when we move away from things that someone wrote in a book, it is someone's interpretation. And you have to study to understand that interpretation. You have to know who we are as a people, who we were as a people, and make sure that we're not taking on someone's ideology that doesn't work for us. That's number one. Number two is when we sit back and say, we're going to make it, when a couple sits back and says, we're going to make it work for us, and they make those determinations and they take the roles and the rules and throw them out. And I didn't say throw the creator, God, Allah, Adonai, Yahweh, whatever your name is for God or the creator. I didn't say throw that out. I didn't say throw the relationship. I didn't say throw the divine that is down in us. We need to have more of that, because when we have more of that that's coming forth, we'll realize that, well, gee, that might be what's written there, but did you really find where God himself said that? And I'm going to give something simple. Did a man say in written scripture that a woman shouldn't be a pastor or shouldn't minister, or a woman? Who made those rules? Who made all of that up? And when you really look at what was behind things that were written for that time, we can go to King James. And if you do the research on King James, you might question some of the things that he wrote. When you do the research on European religion history, the Roman Catholic Church, when you start looking at all of these things, you might begin to question and think for ourselves and really start to say, well, maybe we're going to do what works for us. And I will give you a perfect example. Probably for the better part of 10 years, I did not do laundry, I did not clean, and rarely did I cook. And that's because there was a decision. And that's because my husband said, this is, what we're going to do. There was a point in time where I wanted to leave, corporate altogether. I was like, oh no, I want to do this over here. And I was like, I'm done with that. And he said, there's some opportunities that are coming, and you want to take advantage of those opportunities because they're going to serve you later on for what you want to do in life. Because the passion that I had, it was always there, and I was still doing some level of work in ministry. But he supported me, he encouraged me, but more importantly, he put the work in. So I would come home, and he would literally, if he didn't get a chance to do something, he would apologize and say, I'm sorry, when we get to the house, I didn't get to do this or get to do that, or something that's not done. But I could literally come, he picked me up on a Friday, and Saturday, I could literally sleep because he made breakfast on Saturday. He did the laundry. And when I did go back to doing laundry, guess what? I had to learn how to do laundry over, because he was saying to me, you're not supposed to put that with that, because, that puts those little fuzz balls on there. And you didn't, and I had to just take a step back and say, well, wow, it's been so long since I did laundry. And it's the same thing, with him, that there's some things I can do. I don't have to get an attitude and say, well, why do I have to ask him to take the garbage out 5 times? I mean, I hear these are things that we're so caught up on these roles. And I hear women talk about what gets on their nerves. Well, why do I have to say take the garbage out 5 times? You don't have to say take the garbage out 5 times. Take the garbage out yourself. I mean, where is the rule that he has to take the garbage out? If he didn't take the garbage out, maybe it's because there's something else going on, and maybe he just needs somebody else to take the garbage out. So I don't have an issue with taking out the garbage or getting an attitude because the garbage is not taken out, because he's not getting an attitude with, okay, he's doing the laundry. He's folding the laundry. He's washing the laundry. He's cooking the meals. And when we can support each other in that manner. So that's what I would encourage people, is step outside of this box of roles that we've created and decide what works for you. Maybe it works. There are some men that stay home and they homeschool their children because of the school system. Well, we're in COVID now, but before COVID, there were people that were homeschooling their children, and some of those were men. There's nothing wrong with that. Maybe the wife is an attorney, and maybe they make a conscious decision that that's what they're going to do. I've seen so many extremely well-rounded children, families. There's a woman I met her. She's a professor at Howard University. She teaches law, and she travels the world. and they homeschool their children, but the husband travels with them. So while he's homeschooling them while they're traveling and they're on the road, and she's the person that's doing all the lecturing and the speaking engagements and the traveling, but they have a partnership. So I think that if we can come out of the roles that someone said that we're supposed to be cooking and cleaning, and if that's your choice and that's what you guys agree to do, there's nothing wrong with that. I like to cook. I love to cook. My husband loves to eat. So I am someone, my sisters, everyone knows I love to entertain and I love to cook. You come to my house and you're going to get a feast because I don't know how to make just one thing or something simple. I go overboard. That's something that I love to do. So I'm okay with there being an expectation that I'm going to cook, but I'm okay with that because there's this partnership where there's also an expectation that if I don't feel like cooking, my husband's going to cook. If I don't do the laundry, he'll do the laundry. If he doesn't feel well, I'm going to gather all the trash and I'm going to wheel the trash out to the curb. These little things, believe it or not, start arguments and build upon destroying and tearing down families and marriages.
So why do you think people are so, and this is just, I don't know what I want to say is the most appropriate word to describe it, but why do you think people are so apprehensive in moving away from those roles?
Because it's what we know. We haven't tried anything else. It's what we know. It's what we've been taught. It's part of post-traumatic slave syndrome. My opinion now. But this is I don't want to. This is my disclaimer. This is from my learning, my studying, and I do not claim to be the end all, be all, know all. But it is my opinion that when we look at what has happened traditionally over the years, and women, I mean, my generation, at least, even when I was small as a baby boomer, I was taught to be a servant, not in a negative, intentional way, but that's what I was taught. And then, as I would say, my dad's generation, because I was raised by my grandmother's sister. So, being part of that generation, it was sort of a combination of women that worked, but women that were very focused on the home, and men, there being no expectation that a man would clean or cook. But see, my dad, here's the thing, there's a difference in the way that you were brought up. My dad cooked. My dad cleaned. So having a dad that did those things, having a dad where it wasn't a big deal for him to cook or to clean or to do things like that, that made a huge difference. And my dad's siblings, my aunts, in that generation, they were women that they had careers, but they were also women that there was a portion of, yes, you're doing what you need to do in your home, but it wasn't where it was. I never looked at them and felt that they were enslaved. They were beautiful, intelligent, powerful women that had careers, and I didn't see them in my eyes as there being this, you better cook, you better do this, you better do that. I'm going to tell you where I saw that at. And this is where things get dicey. I saw that when I actually was more involved in church. It's the first place I saw it. Because in church, it was all of a sudden, it was, well, you need to make sure that you get home on time. You need to cook. You need to make sure your laundry's done. There were all these things that you better do all these things for your husband. And I watched women that were in church literally drive themselves into the ground. I saw Men, they work and that's it. And they come home and the food is cooked and it better be hot, you know, these crazy things. And it was kind of like, okay, they work, they go to church, they take care of the kids, and they kill themselves doing everything else. And with that came sickness, disease, the root of disease being dis-ease. But mind you, all this is happening in the church. So this isn't an indictment of church, and no way. I mean, I love my church. I love God. I love ministry. But what we are teaching and how we are teaching it needs to bring things into perspective. So I'm grateful that my son does have the ability. He knows how to cook. I have nephews that can cook. I have nephews that they cook, they can handle and take care of a home, they can do laundry. I have one nephew in particular, he is just brilliant, and I just love just watching him. When I used to go to Connecticut, you know, he has the time when he does his laundry, he does his grocery shopping, and he takes care of his son. And to see people, I have another nephew that it's nothing for him to take on the roles of taking the children to dance and whatever their after school activities are. There's, you know, his mate is a career woman and he works, but they make this thing work together. So I think in these generations coming, but I think it's important for us to make sure that even in these younger generations, that we are encouraging them to be in partnership with their mates. Because a lot of young Black women, and I don't know if you've noticed this, a lot of young Black women don't want to be married. They don't want to have children. They don't want to be bothered because there's this, you know, it's hard, it's work, we just need to come together and agree and not have specific roles for people.
No, I didn't necessarily realize that. Now, when you say that, what age group, and I get this confused about millennials and what the generation comes after them and all of that good stuff. But when you say that, you're noticing that between like what ages are we talking about? Because I had noticed that.
So women that are, and this is from younger women that I mentor or that may be part of some of my programs, including women in my own family. I would say ages 25 to maybe 36.
Okay, so this one, yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. There's a somewhat kind of, I don't want to be bothered. Nope, I'm not cooking nobody's food. I'm not being, you know, enslaved because there's not a partnership. Right. You know, they're looking at this like, and in some cases it could be because there's not a partnership. But let's go back to originally what we were talking about in this morning's message is, as women, whether it's me, whether it's you, what are we teaching? You know, decisions. What decisions are we making and how we're teaching and raising men? Are we raising them with the expectation that women are supposed to be slaves? And it sounds rough, but if you're expecting that somebody's supposed to do everything all the time and you're only supposed to do the things that you want to do, what? That's kind of sounding like a slave master to me.
Yeah, I've even been told in the past things like, well, that's what you're supposed to do. You know, like in other words, you know, you say you present something, so I want to do that. I'm like, well, you think I want to do this and this and this and this? Well, it doesn't matter if you want to. That's what you're supposed to do. You know, so I know I've been told that. So I totally get it, because to me, the whole idea of if we both working full time, but now I'm supposed to work full time and I'm supposed to run everything in the household. I'm supposed to do all the grocery shopping, all the cooking, all the cleaning. Like, that's ridiculous to me. And I think that's why studies show that in marriages, you know, women don't live as long as women don't live as long when they're married versus a man who's married tends to live longer. And I guess I would too. If all I had to do was just to go to work and everything else was cared for, and you know what I mean, and I didn't have to worry about it, you know. So I'm just saying all that to say I've been told that, and I've watched it. I mean, I've been told that over and over again by, you know, aunts, you know, even some of my girlfriends, girl, you better take care of that man, and you got to do, you know, these are all your duties. This is your little checklist, so to speak, you know, and you have to meet all the requirements on that list, you know. So I totally get it. I hadn't really thought about it in a sense of being a slave per se, but I definitely thought that it sounded a little crazy to me. Let me just put it like that. I mean, I've always been one that felt that, you know, as a couple, when you come together, that you do what works for you, you know, what works for you all. You know what I mean? And I don't think it's right for society to say a man is, let me get my quotations on the screen, is less of a man because he's taking kids, you know, he's taking his daughter to dance class, or because he's doing laundry. I mean, I think that's crazy. Just like I think it's crazy to say a woman is less of a woman because she don't put a hot meal, you know, 7 days a week on the table. Like, that's just crazy to me.
There's shared responsibility. Now, on the flip side, do I think we as women go to the far extreme where we're neglectful? And what makes it neglectful is when there's no conversation that says, I need help. It's a simple conversation. And what happens is when we feel trapped and overwhelmed and like we're doing everything and there's no conversation, resentment builds in. And then communication breaks down. And before you know it, you're just like ships passing in the night. You know, okay, I do what I got to do. You do what you got to do. There's no communication. There's no intimacy. There's no taking time to spend with each other versus, you know, then taking time to spend with the family. There's no communication where it's, I need some help. So if there's no communication, then that's a recipe for a breakdown as well. It really comes down to, what do two people want? What is it that they want? And can you come to an agreement that you need help in these areas, you need help in that area? And then sometimes there's a sacrifice. Sometimes you can't have it all. I hear people say, you can have it all. Maybe you can't have it all right now. Maybe there's a sacrifice that has to be made until you can get to that place where you can have it all. But it's those conversations. And because we're not having those conversations, and because we're not having open dialogue, and for whatever reason, we feel that if we say something, we're not going to be heard. And sometimes that can be the case, but it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And then the question becomes, do you want to be right, or do you want to be effective? And there's a difference. There was a friend of mine, her name is Sabrina Jackson Gandy, and I know you've met her on Between Sisters. Well, Sabrina was part of Sister Circle, and she was on the show one day, and she was having a conversation with the ladies. And she was talking about something that she teaches in a class called manese. And it's basically language that we as women have to learn to speak to men, because there's womanese and then there's manese. And so she began to share these really, you know, great tips of how communication can be improved. And you can take this, you know, kind of disagreement or frustration out of your home just by the way that you speak to each other. And so I remember this part vividly. Trina Braxton looked over and, you know, she just kept saying, well, I don't understand this. And well, I don't know why I got to do that. And I don't know. And she just kept kind of coming back. And in a very graceful way, Sabrina looked at her and she said, do you want to be right, or do you want to do what works? And that's what I mean by being effective. So what she's saying in that moment is, okay, you're right about the trash need to be taken out and it's running over, but do you want to be right and keep complaining about that thing, or do you want to do something that works? And she was given a simple example about how we speak, the directives of our conversation. And I'm going to say that one of the things that I've learned from experience, but I've seen in other settings and having conversation with other women, the more masculine energy we throw at our mates, the less they're going to receive what we are saying. And I'm talking about when you, now there's a time, because we have both masculine and feminine energy. And there's a time when you lean into your masculine a little more. You may need to do that in your job, working, dealing with people. And I don't mean that you're just taking on this masculine persona, but I mean the energy. You may need to lean into it a little more for the occasion, but it's mastering. When do I need to lean into that? With your mate and your husband, you don't need to lean into that. I can assure you that when you lean into your feminine side, when you lean into your feminine energy, that's your power. That's your seat of power. And I'm not talking about manipulation. I'm talking about genuine feminine energy and how we communicate with our mates. Whatever went wrong, we don't have to work the neck and have the attitude and all of the bass in the voice. Now, don't get me wrong, you're going to be frustrated at times, but take that deep breath. Take that deep breath. There's a cliche. You get more bees with honey than with vinegar.
So, you know what? So talk about that a little bit. And I'm kind of shifting it because there's a couple other questions I want you to address personally, on a personal note, but I'll do that. I'll flip it around. So lead that into because that leads into your topic, right? In terms of like how you just mentioned about leading with the, femininity. So go ahead and touch base on that. And I got to get my pad out because I need to jot this down. Get your pad out, ladies. Okay, go ahead.
When we're leading with our, and I'm going to say divine feminine. And I'm just going to, here's a disclaimer. I'm not talking about woo, woo, woo. I'm not talking about, it's just a bunch of, feminine, just, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about something that is truly our gifting. Our creator gave it to us. It is the divine part that is deep inside of us. It is who we are authentically. Because if we are to believe that we are created by a greater power, whether you say God or whatever your name for that creator or greater power, if we are created by this divine being, then there must be divineness in us. But then we were created female. And if we're created female and we know we have this feminine energy, that feminine energy is a great seat of power. And I'm not talking about using it for manipulation. I'm talking about a great seat of power for nurturing, for love, for wisdom, for understanding, all of those qualities. So when we go back to this Proverbs 31 woman that we tend to get, kind of whipped with, well, if you look at all the attributes, it wasn't just her getting up early in the morning. It wasn't her, being this great entrepreneur and taking care of her children. And those weren't the only qualities. She had this great nurturing quality that at the age of an adult, she's instructing her son on what it takes to be a good king. Well, that's really important. So there's a power that comes with us operating in our divine. Now, I can tell you that from experience, when I was, I'm going to say, overly aggressive in masculine energy, I did not see the level of success that I saw when I began to operate authentically. We mix up authenticity. We think authenticity means, oh, just show up, be you, say what's on your mind. If you feel like telling somebody off, do that. That's not authenticity. Authenticity is what is in you, that at the core, at the essence of who you are you allowing that to come out? Are you allowing that divine, that brilliance from a feminine perspective? Are you letting that come out? Because that's the authentic part. Or have you taken on this masculine persona, and are you operating in overdrive in this masculine energy because you've got to compete with all these men? I was in a male dominated field where not only was I the only Black person at the table, I was the only female very, very often. And for many years, my showing up in excellence was very stern. I'm going to say it had, I was in type A on steroids personality. I was one of those, when you do the personalysis and they have you red, yellow, blue, and green. Well, I was blood red. I was, I'm here to get it done. I was fire and earth on steroids, mainly fire. But at my core, authentically, my mother gave me that name Lulu because I was air, water. My nature was, from the time I came out of her womb, my nature was to be this loving, nurturing. Those were some of my giftings. But I took those and smashed those down because I'm in this male dominated career. And I took on something that wasn't authentically me. Was I successful? Yeah, to a degree. Was I successful beyond my wildest dreams when I tapped into who I was authentically? When I showed up as water, air, when I really tapped into my divine feminine and I led from there, divine leadership. That's something that's a part of a class that I teach. Divine genius. When I tapped into the genius, but where was it from a divine perspective, not just showing up in excellence? That's when, I got to tell you, promotions, people would look and say, well, how did you get that? Well, why did they do that for you? And because now I'm showing up in exactly who I'm created to be. I didn't take on a masculine personality because I feel I need to compete with a room full of men. I just showed up as who I am and who I was created. And that doesn't mean that I'm batting my eyelashes and dressing inappropriately. That is not what I mean by that. It means that I am just showing up in who I am, a woman. The woman was showing up and not the, hard exterior, this super masculine energy. That wasn't who I was at my core.
So, tell us a little bit about, because I'm looking at the time. Tell us a little bit about how you work with people through your business. Like, who is your, ideal, who's your primary audience? What different types of programs do you offer? Like, how do you help? Do you strictly help women?
Yes.
And how do you help them?
Yes. So yes, I do strictly help women. That's my gifting. I don't try to swim in lanes where I don't necessarily belong. And my ideal client is the woman that knows there's more. Um, she knows that, you know what, I'm doing great. I appear to have it all, and at that moment, maybe she does have all in the context of where she is, but there's more. There's more, and it takes an awakening. It takes coming out of what I call a matrix mindset. Because when we think about how we've been shaped and molded in rules and regulations and, all of the, especially if you've come through corporate, you've been through personalysis, um, uh, what is it, Myers-Briggs. There's so many, 360 feedback. You've come through all these assessments. And all these assessments basically tell you what you need to do to change yourself to fit in so that you can go to the next level. Think about that. Let that marinate for just a second. In the world as we know it, we are shaped and molded to, and we say we're being authentic, but every bit of us is shaped and molded to change. You get this feedback and it tells you these are your areas of weaknesses. I don't believe in weaknesses. I believe in developmental opportunities, but I don't believe in weaknesses. But we're told that these are the areas you're weak in, and all these opinions, because everybody filled out these analysis, we may have filled it out, but then you send it to like 6 other or 10 other people, and you get all this feedback. And it's everybody's opinion about what you need to do to change who you are versus taking who you are at your core and learning how to navigate the waters, because there's some rules out there that, there's just the world we live in. But how do you navigate those waters successfully without losing yourself and who you are authentically at your core? So that awakening and that coming out of the matrix mindset and challenging, and you don't have to do this openly where you're being rude and you're doing something that'll cause you to lose your job. It's just being aware of who you are versus what the world has told you you should be. And then discovering what's unique about you. That's the second piece of what folks learn when they're part of any of our programs, because they all sort of center around the basic same thing, is awakening and then discovery. There are so many great things about us as women that we just need to discover and uncover. There's so much that we haven't even tapped into. And once we do that, now there could be some things that have sort of broken us down or maybe hurt us. So there's a transformational healing in there as well. Because some of where we are today, well, there's some battle scars that we took to get there. So it's making sure that those things are healed, because you don't want to put sugar on top of you know what. So we want to make sure that we go through that process. And then there is ascending. There's ascending to the highest, our highest level. And there's really knowing, there's a knowing that there is no sky and there are no limits except the ones that we set. And it's okay for us to set our own limits, but we shouldn't let other people set them. So it's going through those stages. It's fun. It's revolutionary. It's very radical. It's, and some may say crazy, and that's okay, because I teach crazy is your genius. I learned crazy is where my genius zone comes from, is my crazy. Thinking differently from the way people have told me I should think. So that's kind of like the process, and you get that whether you're in the Ascension Academy, whether you go to one of our retreats, which we have registration open for Dubai right now, Dubai March 2022. And we have other retreats that are local. And also in some of the shorter programs that we have, a taste of the Ascension Academy. So whether you get the whole, I'll say, 7-layer cake, or rather you get, a taste of the cake, it's all good and it's all fun.
All right, so that lets us know a little bit about. I'm glad you mentioned about your Dubai trip or Dubai retreat, and they could find information on the website at whether they want to work with you, whether they want to become a part of the academy, whether they want to participate in the retreat, and you also do one-on-ones too, right? Like individuals.
Yes, I do.
Yes, that as well. So if you go to the website, ladies, you can check out all of her services and contact her that way. So I want to end on a note. I always like to ask every guest, what sort of advice would you give to a younger version of yourself, or just, or if not to you, then to a young lady, maybe that's just graduating high school, and how do you ensure that you practice good self-care? Because, and I like to include the self-care piece, because a lot of times we as women, we're doing, we're juggling so many hats, or juggling so many balls, got so many irons in the fire. And we're always so accustomed to putting everybody else's needs before ours that we basically neglect ourselves, and you can't keep pouring from the empty cup. So I like to make sure that we, address that during every show. So if you could share those couple of things with us, that would be awesome.
Okay. I'll say my younger self. I would tell my younger self to not be afraid to take a chance, take a risk. There's a such thing as taking a risk, but not being reckless. And unfortunately, I learned that it's never too late, but I learned it much later in life, that you can take risk, but not be reckless, calculated risk. So I would say in your younger years, while you're young and you have time to experiment and you have time to, I believe Denzel Washington said, fail forward. He's done a couple of speeches at commencement speeches at colleges, and that one about fail forward. It's a lot easier to fail forward when you're younger, because you've got more time to recover and the growth. So I would say take those risks now in your younger years. Don't worry that if you start out on one path and that's not working for you, don't be afraid to take another path. Don't be afraid to try things, even though they may not work out, because you have the opportunity, especially coming out of high school. So I would say, don't be, this careless person, but don't be afraid to be a little carefree. You're young and you want to take advantage of your youth, because it's not something that you're going to be able to get back. So I encourage them to take time to experiment and to not rush that if I make this decision and it doesn't work out, it's the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. You're only 19, 20, 25. It's okay. It's okay to change majors. It's okay to get a degree in something and decide that that's not what you want. And now you're going to go do something totally different. It's okay to get a degree and say, this corporate life is not for me. I want to be an entrepreneur. It's okay. So I would just be okay with the experimenting and taking some risk and some chances. Self-care. Self-care is not the same as maintenance. So I just want to be clear. Self-care is not getting your nails done, getting your hair done, all those going to the spa. That's not self-care. That's maintenance. At the end of the day, if every nail salon goes out of business, you're not going to let your toenails and your fingernails grow and not trim them. It's a form of maintenance. You're still going to take care of yourself. Going to the hair salon. If all the salons go out of business, and we saw this, with COVID when places closed down, you didn't stop doing your hair. You didn't stop washing it. So these are things that are maintenance that I think we start mixing up, that it's self-care. It's not self-care. It's just maintenance, taking care of yourself. Make sure that you're making the doctor's appointments. You're going for all of those examinations. I don't care how young you are or how old you are. Make sure you're going for all of those. But there's another level to self-care that is very, very important. And that is making sure that you are taking care of yourself from the inside out. Take care of your heart at the level of emotionally and mentally. Self-care has to come from the inside out, and it starts with loving you first. Care about yourself so much that you treat yourself and you love yourself the way God loves you, the way your creator loves you. That's not being selfish. That's not, I'm going to be selfish and I'm going to only spend my money on me. And that's not what I'm talking about. But think about how the creator loves you. The creator is not ever going to abuse you, never going to use you, never going to tear you down, never going to denigrate you. So love yourself from the inside out so much that you love yourself just like the creator loves you. And when you can self-love in that manner, you will see that regardless of what happens in life, because life happens, you will have speed bumps. Speed bump, you hit the speed bump, you slow down, you get over the speed bump, and then you pick speed back up again. So life is going to happen. You're going to have the speed bumps. But when you are loving and self-caring from the inside out on a divine level, you will find that you are far more resilient, that your comebacks, every setback will be a victorious comeback because you are self-caring from the inside out. Our queen here looks gorgeous. I love her pearls. I love her earrings. I love everything about her head wrap. I love everything about her. But I know that she's self-caring from the inside out. So there's more that I see. I see the radiance, but then I see behind the radiance. And that's what we want for all of our queens out here. We want you to self-care from the inside out so that people can look and say, wow, that is a resilient woman. And that's because you're self-caring from the inside out.
I'm so glad you brought that up in terms of from the inside out, and the way you mentioned about getting your nails done, your hair done, the salon, things of that nature, because I hear a lot of buzz about that. A lot of women, say it. I see it on social media that people have a tendency to think that because you're getting your nails done, your hair done, that kind of thing, your eyebrows, your lashes, or whatever, that those are really good, that's self-care, and that those are good forms of self-care. So I like how you refer to that as maintenance, because that's exactly what it is. It doesn't mean that doesn't make you feel good, make you feel better. But when we talk about good self-care and how Lulu just shared from inside out, like I look at that as, for me, there are certain things that completely rejuvenate me. And that's what we're talking about. Completely like rejuvenating your soul, if you will. You know what I mean? Rejuvenating you mentally, physically, and spiritually. So when we think about self-care, make sure you are doing those things. And some of you may say, well, I don't know what to do. And the thing of it, and that's okay. But just sit and think about it. Like in your quiet time, what is it that you do that you just kind of zone out or that you just lose track of time? Like for me, just off the top of my head, and for some of you that may know me or follow me, I love to dance. When those drums get going, those African drums get going, I don't care if I had a headache. I don't care if I'm cramping. I don't care if I just lost my job. When them drums get to going and my body and I'm one with the music and I'm completely in that experience right then in the present. I'm not thinking about what happened before dance class, and I'm damn sure thinking about what's going to happen afterwards. I am in the moment and I feel completely rejuvenated. So when you think about self-care, what is it that you lose track of time in? That it's not work for you, right? And it completely rejuvenates you. That's what we want you ladies to. That's the takeaway from this piece in terms of the self-care. And we talk about that on every show because I think it's so important, so important. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I like how you put it. Maintenance versus self-care, if you will. So thank you so much. And I'm looking at the time. So I want to know, is there anything else that you want to share with the audience? I don't know, any last words or anything about your services before we go ahead and conclude?
I would just like to offer the audience, I am a stickler that people should get to know someone before they sign up for anything. And I would just like to offer your audience that they can go on Facebook to our business page, which is Revolution Ascension. There's like a couple of there's the Ascension Academy private group page, but you want to go to the Revolution Ascension business page, and they can book a free 30-minute consultation call. And that free 30 minutes is really a consultation. They will be sent when they can just go, and there's a button on the Facebook page that says book, and the calendar will come up and they can pick a time and date that's open. And when we get notified, we send out a questionnaire. It is a real consultation. So we send a questionnaire, and we want to make sure that we are giving you the best consultation in that 30 minutes. So we really will talk about your answers that you put in that questionnaire. And we would love for people to sign up for the Ascension Academy and our retreats. Our Dubai retreat which is open now for registration. But I really think that people should have an opportunity to speak one-on-one with someone that they are investing in themselves. It's an investment in the woman as an individual. And I really want that individual to know why they believe that the program is right for them. I could tell them, but how do I know if we haven't had a conversation? So go to our Facebook page, Revolution Ascension. You can always inbox me, Jacqueline Lulu Brown, on Facebook. That's why I put my Lulu in there, because I'm the only Jacqueline Lulu Brown. But go to our Facebook page, book your 30-minute consult call, and let's just chat on how we may be of service, but just some things that you can do with tomorrow or the next day.
Yes. So thank you so much for coming on the show. It was such an honor. I really enjoyed chatting with you, and you are just a wealth of wisdom. Thank you so much for sharing, your experiences with us. So we're going to go ahead and conclude. So this concludes A Queen's Roundtable show, which happens, remember, every second and fourth Sunday of the month. If you are interested in being a guest on the show, the link is always provided in the write-up. Would love to have you, love to sit down and chat with you. But thank you so much for, supporting, for following, for tuning in. And for those of you that are going to catch us on the replay, let us know that you're a replay viewer. Leave any questions or comments that you may have for either one of us. And, thanks again and happy Mother's Day to everyone. And, just thanks again. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks for another show. And again, I'm Jacqueline Kabah Harrison, your host. And I look forward to chatting with you all again soon. And Miss Lulu, this was again an honor, and I will talk with you again soon.
Yes.
All right, so everyone take care, and I'll see you soon again.